Cooper Flagg. He has been as good as advertised to start this season, and somehow he's been able to keep getting better as the year goes on. Last 5 games, he is averaging 24.4 points per game, 7.4 rebounds, over 5 assists per game, shooting 63% from the floor. And how about this? 58% from behind the three-point line, as well as 92% from the free throw line. Simply put, you can't get much better than that. To help me break it all down, I'm going to welcome in Isaac Trotter. Trotter, the single most frequent question I get about Cooper Flagg is whether or not he has lived up to the hype, and I'm going to answer it with a little bit of historical context. There are only 2 players in college basketball history who've won National Player of the Year as a freshman and then gone on to be the #1 pick in the NBA draft. Those 2 players are Anthony Davis and Zion Williamson. Cooper Flagg is in a spot where he can now call himself, I believe, the leader for both. You and I are going to break down those 2 respective races. Let's talk about the player of the year first. College basketball's best player. Where does he sit on your list right now?
He is #1 for me right now because he is in the middle of a historic season. If you look back historically on Ken Palm's Player of the Year rankings, Cooper Flagg is having the 3rd best individual season since he started tracking it, like just barely behind Zach Edey and Frank the Tank Kaminsky from Wisconsin. Like, he is having an unbelievable season. It's like legitimately like fractions behind what we saw from Zach Edey last year in his 2nd National Player of the Year award that he won. So Flagg's been absolutely tremendous. And I think it's going to be an interesting dialogue moving forward with him and Janai Broome, because if Broome is continually out for the next 2-3 weeks with a really painful ankle injury, I think it's going to give Cooper a chance to really start to extend the lead here a little bit, because I don't see many losses for Duke on this slate. They have a chance to put up historic numbers in the ACC, and Flagg is going to be at the epicenter of all of it.
And one of the interesting things there, Isaac, is I think this is only a 2-player race. We can talk about Cam Jones. Maybe Mark Sears plays his way into the conversation. But right now, where we sit in mid-July, this is Flagg versus Broome. And to your point, if Broome is going to miss a month of the biggest part of the season, and Duke is about to maybe plow through the ACC, I just don't know that this is all that close at the end of the day. Talk to us a little bit more about the analytic approach. You mentioned Ken Palm and just how good he's been from a historical context. That takes into account the totality of what he's doing, correct, across all the statistical columns?
Yeah, it's everything. And I think we kind of expected Cooper to come in and be like, all right, we know he's going to be an awesome cutter. We're going to see him defensively. But what he's done as an on-the-move shooter has really transformed this Duke offense. He's coming off pin downs. Defenses are freaking out because now he's like able to come off screens and fire threes. He's like the cheat code because he can post you up now. He can handle it. He's operating as that on-the-move shooter in Duke's system. It's like he can kind of kill you in a bunch of different ways, while being one of the most impactful defenders in college basketball. Like, my one thing is, like, is Duke going to blow teams out in this ACC by too much that he's not going to get to play 36, 37, 38 minutes and put up some of these enormous counting stats? But his efficiency at every single level has been off the charts. And, I think we knew he was going to be awesome defensively. I'm even more impressed by how amazing he's been offensively. It's not hyperbole to say that Flagg has been even better than advertised.
Now, you mentioned the shooting there, and the reason why I think this is important is that was a key variable that NBA scouts were looking at, his long-term projection. Early in the year on CBSSports.com, we broke down the shooting, and there were some mechanical variances, if you will. I mean, I'm just going to put it plainly. He shoots spot-up shots different than he does when he's on the move or off the dribble. He tends to rise up when he's shooting on the move or off the dribble. Spotting up, it's more of a set shot. So I think the fact that he's on the move now, you mentioned they're running him off more screens, he's shooting off the dribble, that's a cleaner looking stroke. The shooting percentages themselves, we showed that to you earlier, those are off the charts the last 5 games. So NBA scouts love what they see. The other factor, just like Janai Broome has had some injuries, his only competition to be the #1 pick in the draft, I think, has been Dylan Harper this year. And Dylan Harper has battled illness the last couple of weeks. I think it was a fair talking point at the end of December. Like, who do you have? Do you have Cooper? Do you have Dylan? Right now, 2 weeks later, I think Cooper has gained some separation from the field, not just because Dylan hasn't been on the floor. I don't think that's a really big factor for NBA scouts. but because of the gains Cooper has shown with his shooting and with his self-creation. The passing, the defense, the versatility, the competitive instinct, NBA scouts already knew that. That was well documented from high school. But it's the progression of the shooting that is really resonating, and that's why, to me, he is, I think, very far ahead of the field at this point in time, tracking as the #1 pick in the draft. But again, I think Dylan Harper squarely in #2 in that conversation.
It's fascinating because I feel like those two guys have lived up to the hype even more than I initially thought. And this whole freshman class, it's like the theme of it. Every freshman in this class has been phenomenal. I wonder if it sets a too high of a bar for next year, because it feels like every freshman that comes in right now has been phenomenal. But I think that kid who's going to BYU next year, what's his name, AJ DeBonsa? Yeah, I think he'll have something to say about that next year. He's going to put up historic numbers as well.
All right, you get a look at some of the numbers right there as we compare Cooper to Dylan. And remember, you can check out my first mock draft over at CBSSports.com. I've currently got Cooper mocked to the Wizards, #1 overall. Obviously, that would be a huge get for the Wizards and a very young team. But Trotter, it is that time of the week where we have to preview some of the biggest games to come this weekend. We are going to start with what I expect to be an absolute offensive bloodbath. Alabama at Kentucky, two of the best offensive teams in the country, two of the fastest teams in the country. I mean, is it possible we see close to 200 points in this one?
Absolutely. First one to 90 is probably not going to be enough to win this one. You might need to flirt with 100. The pace in this game will be absolutely insane. I'm curious to see how Alabama's three-point shooting done. They've kind of masked some of their shooting concerns with their offensive rebounding so far this year. Kentucky, I think, is going to try to shrink the floor on them, and the rebounding on the glass is going to be enormous. If Kentucky can box out and limit second chance opportunities, I think Kentucky has a chance to hold on to this one at home. But this one's going to be fun. I hope you're ready to watch teams run up and down the floor. I'm going to get tired watching it because this game is going to have absurd pace.
And I think you make a terrific point just about Alabama being able to match up with Kentucky. I think some of those matchups probably in Alabama's favor. The other game to watch on Saturday that we are particularly interested in, Purdue at Oregon in the Big Ten. This one looks on the surface like it's a matchup between two of the better guards in the country and conference. Jackson Shelstad, the last 3 games, really picking up the level of his game. But Braden Smith putting up just absurd numbers for Purdue. When you talk about 15 points, 9 assists, and 5 rebounds per game, I mean, talk about stepping in to the big role for Matt Painter. But you think this game could actually be determined by the front court?
Two of the best front courts in the country, period. You know, Purdue has changed their lineups lately. They've brought Caleb First in the lineup next to Trey Kaufman-Renn. When that duo is on the floor, Purdue's outscoring teams by a +36 in the net rating. That's a 99th percentile outcome per CBB Analytics. Then on the other end, you have Oregon, who has a bunch of bigs headlined by Nate Biddle, who I think is having a sneaky, phenomenal season and has put himself on the radar for NBA teams, can shoot the three, terrific defensively. He's going to have to be outstanding defensively against Trey Kaufman-Renn and also contesting Braden Smith's pull-up jumper, which is one of the most unguardable shots in college basketball right now. But I genuinely think this is a litmus test for how this new look Purdue front court lineup can hang, because when we've seen them struggle, it's been they don't rebound very well. They struggle with interior defense. And those are two things that Oregon is going to really test you on with Biddle, Supreme Cook, Brandon Angel, KJ Evans. Like, they come at you in waves in that front court. So this will be a big time battle, has huge implications on the Big Ten race as well.
Now, let me ask you this. You talked about some of those matchups, but a lot of the names you just rattled off, Angel, Evans, Biddle, those guys can all stretch the floor. And I know Oregon has a high post-up rate. They like to find matchups they can exploit, but that means they can stretch all 5 positions on the floor. Can Purdue's bigs get out and move their feet and guard the arc against Oregon? That's my question to you.
Going to be fascinating if they can. I also think it really puts into emphasis Purdue's point of attack defense, which has been a little bit iffy. If Purdue's bigs are out on the floor away from the rim and Oregon's guards are just giving Purdue's a ton of straight line drives, Purdue's in trouble.
All right, Sunday on CBS, we've got Illinois at Michigan State. And if you haven't followed Brad Underwood's team, you know, he said we can't guard anybody in the preseason. Guess what? They're 10th overall in the country right now in defense, and they are every bit as good as advertised offensively. Trotter, I'm framing this one as maybe the most talented team in the Big Ten, meaning Illinois, against the team currently atop the Big Ten standings in Michigan State. Is that a fair characterization?
Totally. Michigan State's done a great job. They're entering in this game 10-game winning streak, but the peaks that we've seen from this Illinois team, very few teams in the Big Ten have been able to top. And this one's fascinating because Michigan State doesn't shoot a ton of threes, but Illinois does. So there's a number I think Illinois can get to offensively if they get humming that Michigan State might not be able to touch. But I'm really fascinated by the war on the glass. Michigan State has really buoyed their offense with offensive rebounding. Illinois is one of the elite defensive rebounding teams in college basketball. So Benham Rickhouse, Tomi Avicic, those are the two best front court shooters in college basketball this year. They combined for over 73s together. But their impact on the glass is going to be huge. Like, it's fun to shoot threes. The meat and potatoes in this game from this Illinois front court is going to probably determine it.
All right, my man Trotter, always with the intel and the expertise. We appreciate it. And everybody, you can check out that game Sunday on CBS from East Lansing. You are not going to want to miss this. Tip-off is at noon Eastern time, and you can watch it on CBS and Paramount+.